How's it going, everyone? My name is Trent Shelby. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to a Digimon deck profile. Today we're featuring an Armor Rush Digimon deck that I took to the PPT tournament that just happened. What's today's date? The 5th? Today's the 5th. So yesterday, June the 4th. We're basically spoiled for deck profiles at this point. There are a couple big events, a few big events actually, I think this weekend, not just, so we had a regionals event through Top Cut, I believe. And then PPT, like I said, was doing a Ghost Omni tournament. That's the one that I was able to get into. I think the demand was a little bit less, there's a little bit less demand for that one than there was for the Top Cut. But they both ended up being 7-round tournaments, which was kind of cool. I heard that that's something that Bandai asked the organizers to do. I don't know if that's true, but in any case, it meant more time to test if you have that kind of willpower and stamina. 6 rounds, I would have been pleased if it did not go any further, because I believe there was one undefeated person by the time 6 rounds happened. But by the end of it, 7 rounds was good for me. This deck profile, or this deck itself, ended up in 4th place after Swiss. And then I ended up in 5th after the knockout. Basically lost the first knockout round against, I think, the guy who won the whole thing. So I can go card by card. I think this deck is probably somewhere in between Armor Rush and Armor Jogress. You know, I tried both variants. I really didn't like the pure Armor Rush, where you're playing a bunch of the armor options like armor texture, plasma shot, and that sort of thing. And I liked just the pure Joggers form, but I just felt it bricked a little bit more in terms, or at least for me, in terms of having pieces together for Shakuamon and that sort of thing. So, you know, what you tend to see with the Armor Jogress is Chimeramon and Shakuamon, and, you know, everything else is kind of pieces in between. There are a lot of times where I end up with 2 blues or 2, you know, just my play style, where I didn't end up with the right pieces at the right time with the pure Jogress, and the same goes for with the pure armor build. So I mixed the two together because I think the Jogress version is not fast enough, but Eggman, he's made of eggs. There's a content creator called Eggman who probably just proved me wrong in that he he just topped that Top Cut event. So with Armor Jogress, I haven't looked at the profile, but I certainly will because I like the idea of it. But anyway, we real quickly go card by card. I think this is 1 card away, 2 cards away from being where I want it to be, and then from there we can talk about how the matchups went. So so the 4 Demi-Maras and the 1 Demi-V, I initially thought that this might struggle against hybrids and that sort of thing, or yellow hybrid. I don't think I ever got to the 5th egg in the yellow hybrid matchups. So I'm tempted to drop this down to just being 4 Upamon. The Demi-V really never came up. It's nice to have an egg available, but it never really came up. And Upamon more consistently comes up for me. So that's my thoughts there. You can easily if you want the 5th egg, this is the ratio I'd go with. But if you don't, just go for Upus. Or do what you want, man. Do what you want. So as far as the VMon ratios, I went with 15 rookies just to fit in basically both strategies in terms of Jogress and armor. And I think that this part is also semi-negotiable in that I see a lot of folk go between I've seen a lot of crazy ratios with VMon in Armor Rush and in Imperial Dramon. So this is what I ended up settling with. I think especially in armor, you want the 4 jamming V. The ability to make sure that you have a body on board after you fire a rocket with an armor. So basically you'll hit for 2 checks. Most of the time those 2 checks will come through. Like you won't hit an option, that sort of thing. But there are occasions where you don't. And if you have a jamming VMON underneath, of course, if it happens to hit a bigger body in both checks, you'll keep the VMON after you've armor purged. So I think the 4 jamming V is important. 4 of the EX VMON I thought was going to be more critical than it was, but there are pieces in here where it is nice to have this guy available, especially maxed out. I don't think I used them to the max that I could have, considering, well, let's just look at the ways that we could restand, because you're going with something I forgot to do in Top Cut, but did in my last turn, basically in Top Cut, but was doing all day is, let's say you Digivolve into a Chimera on top of one of your armors. If you got this guy underneath, you can tap your Davis and Ken to unsuspend him because he's multicolor right when he hits the field. So that'll get you back a memory, so he becomes a 3 cost if you Digivolve on a suspended armor with VMON underneath him. If you Digivolve a Magnamon on a suspended EX VMON, then that becomes a 2 cost. And if you're playing armor texture, whatever you Digivolve into becomes 1 cost less. And like I said, anytime you have Davis and Ken and you have a suspended EX, that's going to trigger this off. So that's nice. It makes everything a little bit cheaper. So I still like it because at least it's an inherited effect and you can keep it in the back. There's only one card that even before this, I think the only card that I really felt like I got a lot of utility out of hard playing was the starter deck 9 VMON. I think starter deck 9. So there's that. But anyway, we have 3 of the Old Force Vidramon starter deck VMON, and then 4 of the other starter deck VMON. I think that's probably how I would stick to it. If any, I think the one that got ignored, or the VMON that got ignored in this build was the what you call them? Which one? I think. Oh yeah, the BT8. The BT8 VMON. That'd be kind of cool to put in. I think it is less critical though. I like the idea of of just hanging out in the back while I can. So not always being forced into feeling like I have to hard play something. And then when I do put something in the back, I feel like I get more out of it. So I like that. That's just more work. So I've aimed towards 7 of my guys having inherited effects that it feels more useful to put them in the back. So again, this is negotiable, I think, based on your play style or based on what you draw, how you draw, and how you play your deck. So what isn't as negotiable or changed at least too often are the armors. We'll skip over the Ankylo for a second. So you're basically playing 4 of each of the VMON armors. So Raidramon, Flamedramon, and Magnamon. Raidramon being either someone you hang out with at the back just while you have a Davis Ken and push out to get an extra 2 memory, or of course something to take to suspend a level 4 or lower and then take it out. Flamedramon being your key attacker, not just because he gains a boost, but because he's a red and blue. And well, I suppose they all have that use in that they're multicolored, but I'm thinking that in terms of red and blue, you can give Chimera a little bit extra DP, where Magnamon would be less useful. I think Raidramon probably falls in their example too. So in any case, Flamedramon as your key attacker, and then Magnamon as either the guy you push up with after you've got an armor in the trash, or something that you just kind of. It's a really good card to have as a deterrent against or to deter Imperial matchup, because especially if you've attacked early with the Flamedramon, get that in the trash. Right when you push your next VMON up from the back, go onto a Magnamon. They're an Imperial's Pyodramon it feels a lot dead, a lot more dead to them at that point, and they might still go into it in the next turn, but if they do, then you sort of punish them with some of your removal here in the form of Ankylomon and Chimeramon. And if they don't, then they tend to go wide, which is a lot more easy to punish as well. So, yep, those are the armors. Ankylomon at 3 is something that I might drop down to 2. I like the idea of anytime I have a Davis or rather anytime I see a Chimera in hand and I have enough to put an armor, I basically try to set myself up to where I have an armor in the back, ready to push up. And either a Davis or Davis Ken, something like that. And basically I can go push the armor up, drop in kilo joggers, and then start going from there. And if you happen to have your top line of this deck, then you're even better off. But it's a super, super good board clear that I think that most players did not see coming from an Armor Rush deck. Most of the time, if I joggers, people were expecting to see... I don't think anyone expected to see Ankylomon. I do think that they imagine they know Chimeramon is common in an Armor Rush build, but not with an Ankylo. So Ankylo gives an extra 3k DP subtraction if you just attack with the Chimera. If you happen to be attacking with something that can unsuspend, like the Imperial Dramon, you're doing 6k total subtraction in that turn because it's not once per turn. So yep, let's see here. The top line, 2 Imperials. That could probably get dropped down to 1 potentially. I like the ideally you'll never. I don't think you go through both of them in a game, but it's nice to see it in general. The cool part about Ankylomon and Imperial and every card except for the Chimeramon, of course, is that they're free in their descriptions, so you can search them out with your starter deck Vmon. So you either hard draw into them or grab them off of your search. And if you have, and Imperial's a target with Davis as well. So it's nice to be able to mix the strategy in with minimal clash, I think, and a lot of synergy. So, but yeah, one of my favorite combos in general with this deck, especially when my, decks that boards that you'll face pretty commonly are, especially if you a suspended Imperial Dramon of some form, let's say Dragon mode or Fighter mode, and maybe 2 guys next to it, especially if they were on Dragon mode, of course. And so then they might have it suspended because they decided to attack a couple times with Imperial Dramon and then go end their turn on the suspended without a Davis Ken, or they decided to go HPD, something like that. Davis Ken isn't always active for them, so they do end up on a lot of suspended. But even a suspended Imperial Dramons, even if they don't, this combo works. So you push out with an armor, hard drop the Ankylomon for 3, Chimera, and if you got, so let's pretend for a moment you have Ragermon under as your armor that you've pushed up, and that would probably be the one because you're hoping that you have your Davis Ken out, giving you 3 memory as you push, maybe just a Davis. In any case, you're going with 3, pushing up Chimera, grab one of your armors underneath. You do 4k-ish or 5k across the board, and hopefully the 4k because that means that you've got 4 colors as Imperial, or rather as your Chimera, and you're getting a 12k DP boost. So if they've got their guys suspended, you've cleared some of the wide board. If you haven't cleared all of it, you still can attack with Chimera into security or ideally the suspended Imperial Dramon and do minus 3k to something else at that point. If they happen to not leave their Imperial Dramon suspended for whatever reason, they did have the Davis Ken, then you just, in a perfect world, you have your fighter mode, Imperial Dramon fighter mode in your hand, and you can Digivolve on top of that, return their guy. A lot of times I was able to do that turn passing them only to 3, and they'll have had Davis Ken, so they'll have finished their turn with a big board, do a lot of damage, and nothing in raising. And then if you leave them at 3 memory with nothing in raising, you're still feeling really good. You've cleared their board and you've got an Imperial Dramon, especially if you've got Davis Ken, you're getting 2 memory off of that because you have green and blue as your Digimon, hopefully green and blue underneath him so that you can start triggering off his effects. So, stick board clears, dude. I love it, and that's part of the reason why I like this version of the deck. Options, 8 options, and they're the best ones that you can play. You can probably drop one of each if you want to. For an ice wall, for an armor texture, for anything else you want, it doesn't matter. But this is just what I went with for the sake of saying I know what I'm searching for, I know what I want. It would have been nice to have ice wall, I will say that. It would have been very nice to have ice wall. I played with bonds in previous formats. An ice wall, especially at 4, was killer. So that would have been nice to have. But, I went with 4 hammer sparks and 4 fire rockets. And in terms of the fire rockets, or rather in terms of the hammer sparks, no regrets. In terms of the fire rockets, I only had one round where I thought they really clogged me up. Otherwise, I think it came in clutch in every single round. I think it ended up winning me at least a game per round. And some of those matches were 2-0s. So, yeah, that goes a long way. And then you got 3 of each tamer, Davis and then Davis and Ken. So, you can, I see the 4-2 split favoring Davis and Ken, and I certainly see that the benefit there. I might switch to it. I might just straight add the 4th Davis Ken and have 7 tamers. I haven't decided yet. That would have been nice to have in the yellow hybrid matchups in that, so you're not forced to go wide or push up and you start digivolving into like a Magnamon or the kind of thing or digivolve into something when you don't want to. It would have been nice to have another card you can play, pass them straight to 3 or pass them to 1 if they've given you if they don't have a memory tamer. But that is what it is. So matchups. How long is this freaking video going on? I can just go over the matchups really quickly, just to kind of discuss how I feel this deck goes in. I think this deck does do okay into pretty much anything. Obviously, DP reducial sucks, but I think that every deck hates to have their DP reduced. So to say this deck has a hard match against yellow hybrid, one of the really good decks, is just silly because all the decks for the most part do, except for something like red hybrid. That would be kind of nice to pilot. But we ended up playing the big 2, I think 3 times each total. So round 1, we ended up losing 1-2 against Imperial Jamon. The last game itself was down to my opponent having the ice wall. He passed me to 5 memory, but I could not clear his board without attacking, and then also digivolve and put a blocker up. So it was perfect for him, and good on him because he's probably saved that ice wall the whole game and waited for the right moment. So, but I was happy to get a game out of Imperial. I didn't think that this deck would go crazy far or anything in this tournament, so that was already good enough for me. The next round was 2-0 against Leopardmon. This is the only rogue deck I played. It was like a Leopardmon Jogris, which was fun to play. But I don't think it would be considered super high tier. The board clear in terms of they do like to have one a stack and then kind of go wide from there as their finishing plays, and that Imperial Chimera into Imperial play came up a lot. Or rather, Ankylo into Chimera into Imperial. That play came in clutch. So let's see here. The next match was a 2-0 against Yellow Hybrid. The way I treated the Yellow Hybrid matches in general that day was to, unless my opponent was super clearly bricking, I tried to start aggressing pretty quickly. Yellow Hybrid's playing, a lot of builds are playing less TK Kari than they used to. So if you happen to get, if their security stacked in the beginning, it's stacked in the beginning and it'll be stacked at the end. So you either lose before or you lose later. That's just how I kind of rationalized my thought process. But if it's not stacked at the beginning and you start hitting it early before they can use their their TKs and their Zoes to filter stuff out and recover and all that mess, then you're hitting a lot more freely. So, is that logic flawed? Potentially. But it's what I went with. And like I said, unless they super clearly were bricking and couldn't get, and were having to having no rookies and having basically only being able to play tamers like Cody and that sort of thing, then I would chip in a couple times, and then I would start to build, as long as they didn't have a Patamon in the back. I would start to kind of build for the bigger play, which is a couple 2 armors with like a 2 fire rockets kind of thing, and then and then joggers perhaps for the last hit. And that game plan worked pretty decently. There's obviously times where that varied to some degree, but that's what I went with. And it worked in the first match that I played Yellow Hybrid. The next game was against another Imperial. That was a 1-1 draw. All super close matches. I would argue I would have won during my next turn. I would also expect my opponent to argue that they would have won in their turn after that if they had a turn. So who knows? But it was a 1-1 draw. And the next match was 2-1 against Mastamon. That one is that's a pretty tricky matchup in that they can clear a couple bodies at once. And so if you're only going wide with a bunch of rookies, you're probably going to have a rough time of it. But if you've got your tamers out, and if they aren't able to build properly, you're able to use your board clears, then you're in a good state. Match after that, 2-0 against Yellow Hybrid. Again, he bricked pretty hard, it looked like, in the first game. Or at the very least, he never showed me the Patamon or the Rapidmon. In that he didn't show that he had both at one time. So basically built as long as I could. Once I saw him put a Patamon in raising, then I thought, okay, well then these guys aren't going to last, and that's when I started my chips. Of course, if someone leaves you, if they have a memory tamer out and no Patamon in play, that game plan doesn't really work, or you're taking a risk of your opponent basically going to their next turn, hard dropping the Pata for 3, and then dropping a Rapidmon and clearing your board. And depending on how many tamers they have, because especially if you're only building with like a Flame Dramon or other rookies on the side, you guys won't last. If you have a Magnamon, that play is still okay. But then, and that's what I ended up building with, is 2 Magnamons and something in the back. And so then I would push up and then start swinging, and then a Jogris and Fire Rocket. Fire Rocket again came clutch. Last match, round 7, was against Imperial Dramon, and that one was a 2-0. So actually I got a draw, win, and loss against Imperial Dramon. So that sounds about right. That deck is super quick. By the time round 3 or the third time came along, though, I felt like I really either drew well enough or just figured out how I really wanted to approach it, which is get swinging early once with my Flame Dramon or any armor, and then get my Magnamon out before they can get their Jogris going, especially since they can't bot deck your Magna even before he gets a boost, but once it has a boost, they can't start swinging with their Imperial freely. So Magna just puts a huge stamper on them, on their game plan, and then you go from there. If you have a Magna and you're able to build an armor, you push out and you start Joggersing and being silly and board clearing. So there's that. A top cut, I lost 1-2 against Yellow Hybrid. The chipping strategy it obviously paid off in one of the games, but it did not pay off in the last game. I think that was one of the occasions where I ended up hitting like memory boosts and that sort of thing, so I wasn't hitting. It was a good security from the start, and then they drew into their DP removal, and they drew into so they drew optimally in the last game, I felt, and played it well. So not like they didn't play it well, but yeah, that's the list and that's the day. I want to fit in an Armor Purge maybe. But an Armor Purge, potentially, and a Davison Cannon. Those are the cards I felt like, every now and again I felt, it would be swell to have an Armor Purge. Especially with that EXV mod sitting there, I would get more utility out of it. So I really can't find the space for it. Like the deck space, the space is so tight. Like, and Kilomon is the only thing I can think of, but then the Jagras becomes a little bit less viable, and then at that point, okay, do I just abandon that, drop an Imperial, or do I drop, what do I start dropping at that point? So it's going to require some testing. If you have any thoughts, definitely let me know in the comment section down below. Otherwise, I was really happy with the list. I was happy with the day, and I'm very happy you watched this video. So yeah, if you did enjoy this video, please let me know in the comment section down below. If you did not, also let me know. Yeah, that's it. All right, you take care. See ya.